But it's great to have you here, and I sure appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come visit with me a little bit. I've been really thrilled to get to have this week back in the district where I can go around and visit with the people I work for. And I do work for you and serve you. And I believe you are the experts on many of the issues that's facing Washington. And we need some of your common sense up there and less of some of that Washington expertise. So I'm glad that you came out today so we can discuss some important issues. It's supposed to be a meet and greet, but I don't know. We'll just kind of talk here. And I don't have a PowerPoint presentation this year, anything like last time. Oh, thank you. This is Shaylin. We've got great staff working for you, your team members. This is Shaylin. She's one of my field reps from the west side of our district, and she knows Larry. She was an intern with State Senator Delbert Scott for a while when Larry was in the Senate, so got to know each other. But she is great. And Levi Mitchell, he's one of our field reps from the south part, and then Chris Jansen, he's your field rep. He's out of the Jeff City office. So we've got a lot of good team members here working for you, and since she handed them to me, I hope everybody got one of these. I want to just encourage you to hang on to this, because this is your hotline to me. This is our phone numbers for all our offices, as well as the Washington, D.C. office, and our email, and where you can follow me on Twitter and Facebook if you do that sort of thing. So if you have a question, or you have an idea, or you hear something on TV and you're like, that's crazy, or we should be doing this or that, give us a call, let us know. Or if you hear something and you want to know, is this true? We get a lot of, there's a lot going around the internet, the email. It's great. Some of it is accurate. There's some of it, though, that sometimes isn't always accurate. So I appreciate when people send an email and say, is this true? We've heard this and such and such. So anyway, keep this so you can get in contact with us, and if we can be helpful, let us know. But I guess I thought I would just kind of share a little bit of some of the things going on and then hear what's on your mind. So maybe we can spend a few minutes talking like that. I was real thrilled last week. We had our first bill pass the House of Representatives, and I see a lot of the rural electric cooperative people are here. And we're just really thrilled because it has a provision that helps our rural electric cooperatives, but it also helps our community banks, helps our credit unions, and helps our farm credit banks be able to offer the types of loans that they want to without some of the onerous regulations that are coming down from the Dodd-Frank financial bill that passed a couple of years ago. And they were, our local financial institutions were getting swept up in some of these huge regulations that are coming down, and would have made it even harder for them to be able to do what they need to do to provide credit to our small businesses. So the Small Business Credit Availability Act, that's what we call it, it passed by over 2/3 in the House. So that means it had bipartisan support, and I really appreciate that. So we were able to work with Democrats and Republicans and get something done. So I want to make sure you know that, because you hear a lot of how there's partisanship and other things aren't getting done, but our bill, we did get it done, and it passed 312 to 111, which is pretty overwhelmingly, and goes over the Senate. So hopefully they will take it up and move it forward and get it passed, but I was thrilled to be able to get that done.
Why did they take up that bill? They haven't taken anything else to come out.
That is true. That is true. We can hope, though. We have passed a couple of bills with bipartisanship support. The 3 trade agreements, of course, had both sides, Senate and House, working. We repealed the 1099 form provision of the part of the Obamacare, and got support for that, and a few other things. There's a few things, so maybe this will be part of what they take up. I don't know. We can hope. But if you didn't know, I represent you on 2 committees in the House, the Agriculture Committee and the Armed Services Committee. And those were the 2 committees that I requested on your behalf, because I know they're priorities of this district. Agriculture is our #1 industry in Missouri, and certainly very important in the 4th district. And being a lifelong farmer is something near and dear to my heart, and I was glad I could get that appointment. In fact, I'm the only representative from Missouri now on the House Agriculture Committee, which I think is important, because Blaine Luckenmeyer and Sam Graves were on there, and they got moved to other assignments. So even though I represent the 4th district first and foremost, I really have a role in watching out for all of the agriculture in the state of Missouri on that. And we're getting ready to take up the farm bill in that committee, and that's a huge bill as we authorize every 5 years. You know, of course, we're looking for ways in all aspects of government to rein in the spending, and certainly that's going to be part of what we do with the farm bill. I expect that probably the direct subsidies will go away. Some of those programs probably aren't going to be there, but there'll be some other supports. But we'll just have to see. The Senate has passed their version out of their committee last week, and then in our House Ag Committee, we're supposed to take it up when we get back next week, start working on it, and maybe vote it out in June. So we'll see what happens, but that's going to be taking up some of my time next few weeks. Next week, as you may have heard me say visiting over here with the Commissioner, is in Armed Services Committee, we're going to be voting on our National Defense Authorization Act, the bill that funds and authorizes the funding for our military. And that will take up a lot of a chunk of our time next week. Then we'll vote on it, the full House floor the next week. So it's been an honor to serve you on that committee for sure. Be able to stand strong for our men and women in uniform and make sure they have what we need. So I'm fighting against a lot of the extra cuts, additional cuts to defense that are coming down, trying to restore that funding. But anyway, we can talk more about that if that's what you're interested in. But those are the two committees I'm on and spend a lot of time working on. And feel very honored to get to serve you in that regard. But we've been trying to reduce gas prices, pass some bills for that. We've been trying to reduce some of the onerous regulations from EPA that's certainly harmful for our rural electric cooperatives and our energy production, and trying to help get jobs. So anyway, I'll kind of close and let you ask questions that are what's interesting to you, and or comments. You have suggestions. Yeah.
I actually have a couple of things that I would like to discuss with you, but with you being on the board, talking about our military. Next week I'm going to be 40 years old. A lot of gentlemen and women that I went to school with are now coming back after years of serving in Afghanistan. These individuals are owed not $10,000, not $50,000, a lot of them close to over $200,000 in back pay. They've been deemed disabled, maybe at 40%. The doctors can't fix them. So now we're saying, let's deem you 100%. They're stopping their payments completely. Instead of them getting a check for $700 while they were the 40% disabled, they're getting nothing until they're deemed 100% disabled. Their credit is ruined. These are men and women that do not know us, that have sacrificed everything to serve our country.
Wow.
What are we doing? And these people have contacted congressmen and everyone, and they're not getting any response from anyone at all on what can be done.
Yeah, I'm so glad you came and brought that to my attention, because that's very, very disturbing to hear. That's the first I've heard of it, and we'll be happy to look into that. Not only myself and my direct connections on the Armed Services Committee, but we have on staff a great person, Jana Worsham, out of the Jeff City office, that has the magic numbers for the VA and for a lot of these departments. She used to work for Senator Bond. She was his veterans and military liaison. And she's done a tremendous job in helping many of our veterans get the benefits they deserve. So between her and her connections and my office, we'd be happy to look into that, because that just is wrong. That is totally wrong.
It is wrong. And I deal with seniors myself, and the Veterans Administration is a nightmare. You know, everything is ranked to when you served, did you get shot at? You know, if I were 80 years old, I would throw my hands up and say to hell with it all.
Well, please give us, we're shaking your hands. She can take down more information and your contact her. Anyway, we can work on this, but I'd be happy to look into that. So that's why I come home and visit with you all, is to find out what's going on, what I need to do. So thank you for coming today and letting us know. So, yeah.
I'd like to thank you first off, Vicki, for becoming a co-sponsor of the stock group. And in fact, I was told by a mutual friend of ours, it's kind of a questionable friend, I guess. She said that you probably wouldn't become a co-sponsor of that bill because it was introduced by a Democrat. And I really do appreciate you becoming a co-sponsor. It meant a great deal to me, and in fact, doing it just because it was the right thing to do.
That's what I'm supposed to do, and that's what I try to do, but thank you.
And I really do appreciate it. Now, the thing is speaking of this, these farmers starting up, you know, with all of a sudden there's some kind of dust mitigation coming out of the EPA, and of course they dropped that, and then all of a sudden...
Well, they haven't.
Oh, they haven't? Oh, okay.
Wish they would.
And also the child labor. You can't have one of your kids under the age of 18.
No, they did drop
working
that.
on a farm.
Yeah.
And are there any other surprises coming down the pipe?
Well, the nature of a surprise is you're not aware of it before it hits, so I wouldn't be surprised, but it seems like every week there's some crazy regulation coming out of a bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. that is far beyond the legislative intent of the Congress in the past, who passed the laws. It's just crazy. I'm sure, like you said, the Department of Labor, if you hadn't heard, they issued these rules for who can work on a farm and who can't, and basically made it so that any youth, unless you're the direct descendant of the farmer, you're not going to be able to work on the farm. They didn't say it like that. Well, they did. It said you can't do this, 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 this. So I've read it. Okay, here's what you can do. Yes, you can work on a farm if you live in rural America and want a summer job and want to learn the work ethic and save up some money for college or whatever, but you can't get on a ladder above 6 feet. You can't work in a grain bin. You can't get in a pen with livestock. You can't vaccinate. You can't drive a tractor. You can't hook up an implement to a tractor. But you go ahead and get that farm job. I was like, what's left? The kid just stand there and wave at the farmer as he goes by. I mean, it was terrible. But thankfully, there was such outrage from the American people saying common sense, saying, who are you, Washington, to say whether my child or not can do these things? And they said no more. As long as the Obama administration is here, we will not introduce this again. So that is a small victory. However, the other things just keep coming. Like I say, the farm dust regulation, it's still in force. What they're doing is changing the definition of coarse particulate matter, so much so that even farm dust would qualify. And you know, I've lived on a gravel road my whole life, probably always will, and I can tell you, you can't even drive down the road without making dust, near alone you can't farm without creating some dust. All the farmers in here know that. So you're subjecting your farmers now to potentially huge fines if they don't stop dust. Now, come on. So we introduced, and we did pass a bill in the House to stop the EPA from regulating farm dust, but it's sitting there in the Senate. We in Ag Committee had Lisa Jackson, the administrator for EPA, come before our committee, and we had quite a hearing with her discussing a lot of these regulations, and she assured us that EPA is a friend to the farmer, that it's just a myth that they don't like farmers. And she said, we have no intention of regulating farm dust. So we've been waiting for an exemption from the EPA saying, okay, we're not going to do it. It hasn't come. So it's been almost a year now. So it's like, if you don't intend it, let's exempt it. The latest one that I found, we had a business roundtable on Wednesday up in Sedalia. And this is the second one we've had in the last few months. We had one down in Waynesville. Same issue came up in both of these. And you're going to just not going to believe this. The Department of Justice has come out with a new interpretation of what the Americans with Disability Act should mean for the hotel industry. And they are now being required to purchase a permanent wheelchair lift, costs $5,000 to $6,000, for every water entity they have on their property. So if you have a regular pool, you have to have a permanent lift. If you have a kiddie pool, you have to have another one. And if you have a hot tub, you have to have a third permanent unit. Now the hotel operators went to the Department of Justice and said, what about a portable? Couldn't we just buy one portable unit? Even though many hotel operators say, we've had the hotel for 15 years, we've never had a customer come here in a wheelchair who's wanted to get in the pool. But the hotel people said, hey, we'll be happy with, we'll offer, can we just buy one portable lift to have on site in case a customer came and wants one? No, you have to do a permanent lift. You also have to make your saunas wheelchair accessible. Well, you know, most of the saunas are kind of, you buy a little unit thing, you have to step into the little wooden room. So hotels are saying, we're having to take those out now because there's no way we can rebuild them financially and comply. They also said they're having to purchase on a formula basis so many hearing impaired kits for their hotel. So one, the lady in Sedalia that owned the 3 Comfort Inns was telling us They always have one. They've had it for years at the desk, one of these kits. And if, she says, probably the 15 years we've been in business, maybe we've had 3 times a hearing impaired customer, but we have them available. We attach them to the the telephone and the different things in their room. But now they're saying, no, you have to, based on the number of rooms you have to purchase 7 kits. She says these kits are about $300 a piece. Whether you need them or not, they're going to have to put out $2,100 to have 7 kits sitting under their desk when they probably aren't going to be used. So I've co-sponsored a bill to say you don't have to do this, hotels, and try to bring some sanity. They can do portable lifts. They can only have 1 kit, whatever. But we'll see. So it's a never-ending story there. Every week there's some new regulation coming down that's beyond common sense, and it's kind of interesting. Yes?
Yes. Thank you very much, Congresswoman Hartzler. If you don't mind, I'd like to talk about energy.
Yes, that'd be great.
First of all, in 2008, when we faced $4 gas, the Republican response was the president can't snap his fingers and change the price of oil. And it seems that the message has changed because we have a different president. The other thing I wanted to address is we're looking at, as I understand it, natural gas, expanding petroleum drilling, expanding coal shale drilling and resources, and coal. I did some research, and all I'd ask is that I'm basically brought the information for you.
Okay, sure.
In terms of natural gas, supposedly we have 100 years of natural gas supply on hand. The one thing I noticed that I would point out right off the bat is on page 3, there's an interesting gap in terms of what is proved, what is possible, what is probable, what is speculative. When you start getting into speculative, that's like betting on an inside straight when you've got a 10. And it just doesn't work. In many cases, there's information regarding that we could be as low as 11 years, as high, and the next step would be 21 years, and everything that the industry says is out there is we're looking at a maximum of 95 years. So between 11, 21, and 95, something is going to happen, and we're going to be out of natural gas. Okay, that's best case scenario. In terms of the world's oil supply, and I took a friendly resource. It says that there's basically 122 years of oil reserves out there. The one statement they made is that the peak in global oil production will not come before 2030, which is 18 years away, and will be followed not by a steep decline, but rather by an undulating plateau of ups and downs in output before a gradual drop-off, according to the report. But taking their figure of 122 years, we're out of gas. Oil, it's gone. Okay? The next one was regarding the shale oil. Okay? The one thing I noticed is that oil shale is essentially crude that has not been processed through the normal heating and cooling of the earth over the hundreds of thousands of years it takes to turn it from black rock into liquid petroleum. Okay? The energy and water that would be required to convert those shale oils, where it's still rock, would essentially make it economically impossible right now. And we can essentially assume that a producer, a driller, or a refiner is going to pass along all of those costs. So as this approaches the end of its availability, you're looking at increased costs anyway. That was a very interesting, and then it talks about the reserves in terms of what we have in the continental 48, excluding the XL pipeline. Okay. The one thing I did want to ask in terms of the XL program, did you vote for it to go through in its original Keystone in its original plan through the middle of the Oglala Aquifer?
We voted on that several times. I'm not sure if the original one had that or not, because Nebraska.
Well, the original one went through the Oglala Aquifer before the governor of Nebraska and the Sunday Republicans that were in the pipeline.
Well, I voted for it the whole time. Yeah.
The problem is that there was an oil spill of these tar sands in Kalamazoo, Michigan, okay, on the Kalamazoo River. The expected cleanup was approximately months. It turned into a 2-year project. They just recently opened 3 miles of the 37 miles they closed. The problem is that because tar sands oil is so heavy, it has to be diluted with a toxic mix of things, basically to make it liquid enough to travel through the pipeline. When this pipeline broke, the toxic fluid is basically evaporated. What the bitumen did is it sank to the bottom of the river and became a permanent part of the fixture.
Well, I'd be happy to look at all that. Can you kind of wrap it up here?
The problem is...
This is good information, though.
Well, the problem is that they're basically using the citizens along that 37-mile stretch to find out what's going to happen. They're basically guinea pigs. So that takes us through natural gas, that takes us through petroleum, and that takes us through shale oil. And the last one is coal. And we're basically right back to where we started in the 19th century with coal stacks. And then we've got 250 years, assuming that after the first 100 years of oil and natural gas is gone, the coal will run out. Last thing was I picked a list. Oil and petroleum are not just gasoline on it. There are approximately 6,000 items that are made from petroleum, and I printed off a list of 166, which include things like ink, dresses, shampoo, enamel, cream. So when the petroleum is gone, and their best estimate is 122 years, so is nail polish, ballpoint pens, antihistamines.
Life will end as we know it.
Well, what I'm saying is, the policy seems to be that we're standing on a railroad track, okay? And we can see a mile off that a freight train is coming. And we're going to stand on that track and assume that something is going to happen before that track hits us, or before that train hits us. All I'm asking is that, accepting the best case scenario, okay, put out by the industry in terms of oil and coal and everything else, we're essentially looking at a crisis point that's going to start at eventually somewhere between 30 and 50 years, which is our graduates. And all I'm saying is that if we don't get aggressive in terms of wind and solar, wind and solar are going to be there long after the oil, at this rate, long after oil is gone, long after coal is gone. It's a permanent source of energy. And the resistance of your party to promoting those resources, aggressively promoting those resources. If we want to have nail polish in 70 years, we need to be putting up solar panels. I don't understand the logic, is basically what I'm saying. This is free. Why don't we make the economic judgment and commitment to promoting those resources actively, rather than saying we'll drill until it's gone and then we'll look
Sure. I'd be happy to, can I have all that?
Yes,
That'd be great,
yeah.
happy to look at that. I'm a former teacher, and
Well,
I like
like
knowledge, and I like facts, and I do a lot of reading, and so I'll be happy to look at this. I support an all of the above energy policy. I think we need to be looking at renewables. I don't support some of the wasteful spending that's been going to like Solyndra and some of the other projects.
I knew you mentioned Solyndra.
Well, there's a lot of money that's been wasted on that, but it's part of the mix. I think we need to be pursuing nuclear. I think we can do nuclear safely. France is almost totally powered with nuclears, and it takes 15 years or so to build a plant. So, that's something we should be moving forward with as well. But I think we should be using it. But while at the same time, pursuing other alternatives. But we need to reduce our dependence on foreign oil, on countries who don't even like us. So anyway, be happy to look at that, and appreciate
I did have
your
one other
comments.
question.
Well, let me come back to that if I could, because there's other people who want to ask questions. But thank you. Excellent points. Barry?
Representative Hartzler, I represent the electric cooperatives, as a lot of people know, and we agree with your position that if we're going to continue to have enough energy to power our country, we're going to have to look at all these resources. The electric co-ops in Missouri, we get our electricity from hydro, 478 megawatts of hydro. We get 750 megawatts of our electricity from wind. We're looking at solar applications. We have coal. We have natural gas. So it's going to be all the above, or our country's going to run out of energy. And we agree with you. We need to be looking at sources that we can get used in Missouri and the United States, and not Saudi Arabia and other countries.
Yeah, very good. All right, what else? Yes. Dan.
I am the first Adams that has graduated from high school probably for 100 years. My family owns, well, me now, for 135 years, my family's farmers. And I'm not a farmer. My dad died, and my mother was a public school teacher. She
Yay.
believed in education. Mama taught for 35 years. She died at old age last year. And I am a lawyer today because of guaranteed student loans, because there is no way that my mother could have done that. No way I could have saved up the money. No way my son can go to school here without guaranteed student loans. And my mother, in about 1986, put our farm in the CRP. And I'm rebidding the contract this year for 10 years, and I believe in that program. And for what it's worth, a lot of your constituents that are family farmers and believe in government programs like student loans, guaranteed student loans, and I don't believe in wasting that money. And I believe in the Social Security that kept my mother comfortable. I surely believe in the Medicare that paid all of her medical bills, and I repaid all my student loans. And I'd ask you as our representative to put any ideology aside, that government can help your families and your people here in the middle of Missouri, and that not all government programs are wasteful. And I'd like your support for those programs that everybody in this room, if they live to be 65 years of age, will be on Medicare. And I don't want a Medicare reform bill that lets him have it, me not, my son not. I don't want the Ryan plans reform for Medicare. I want something like we've got, and I want us to be able to get along better between the parties and work together to get things done and not try to.
Yeah, well, I'm in support of that too. Like I said, we just passed a bill and worked across the aisle to get
But
that
I want to
done.
have one question on that bill, and the power industry is here. Why does a not-for-profit credit union controlled by a power cooperative, which is basically, that's what you added to the bill, to the small banks, the lenders, and the savings and loans that were already exempt if they were up to $30 billion in size. Why does the co-op, electric co-ops that I thought were supposed to supply power with assistance from the government to rural areas, they lit our farm in 1948, the REA, why is it important for power cooperatives to compete with small banks, farm credit lenders?
Oh, no. I think you're understanding. You get misunderstanding. The section of the bill for them has to do with their own lending company that they have. You want to explain that, Don?
The co-op doesn't own the credit unions. People that belong to credit unions own the credit union. The co-op certainly supports that for their employees and for the people that utilize it. They don't own the co-op. They do not own the credit union. They don't have any vote in the credit union. It's like any other credit union that anybody forms. But the co-op doesn't own it.
Now this bill exempts those credit unions. Who are these credit unions? These are credit unions owned by the co-op?
No.
Let me say one more time. The co-op does not own any credit union.
Well, they control them according
No,
to
they
the
don't.
No. It's a different sections of the bill.
They don't control them either.
They don't.
Well, why do you need it? Why do you need to make $1 billion worth of credit default swaps?
Was our financing for our major infrastructure loans and borrowing. The major borrowers that we get money from to build distribution line, transmission lines, substations, all comes from an outfit called Cooperative CFC. It's Cooperative Finance Corporation, and it was caught up in the Dodd-Frank regulations. Our bill exempted that, and CoBank is another rural lender that loans not only to rural electric co-ops, but to a whole lot of ag interests, and it also was included. Those are the two primary reasons. In fact, the credit unions are in there.
That's not
wasn't our
totally
major
different.
issue.
No.
Our major issue was the two I just mentioned. And it was financing for our infrastructure loans.
But the electric co-op credit union is owned by the employees.
Well, who
And
was
they
over
elect
$30
their own
billion
board.
that needed
They
it?
elect their own board to represent their interests in their credit union. But I'm an employee of electric co-op. I borrowed money from Central Trust Bank in Jefferson City to build my house. Nobody forced me to do business with the credit union. That's my own personal decision. whether I want to do business with a credit union or a bank. The co-op doesn't force their employees to do business with a credit union. It never happened, it never will.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I'm not trying to argue. I'm truly confused. I want to know the answer to the question. Was it to build your infrastructure,
Yeah.
or was it to let your credit union make loans? Which? And how do credit default swaps help that? Because that's all that it dealt with, is credit default swaps.
No, I didn't, not credit default swap.
Your
No.
bill did. I don't know that one I read did. That was it. It was
Yeah,
a very
no.
short bill.
Yeah.
It was an amendment.
Yeah, so we can talk about that later, but you got some information that.
But was it for the
clarified.
co-ops primarily? Is that the benefit?
No, it was
No.
affected all banks in
Yeah.
rural Missouri.
Well, they were already
Rural
exempt.
America.
Up
Well,
to
they
$30 billion.
didn't, they were falling under, if you want to answer Joe's another.
There was an exemption. It was actually Peterson who had the exemption written into Dodd-Frank.
Right.
For the CFTC to exempt people up to the
$30 billion.
The CFTC never wrote that rule. They never wrote it. They had the option to. They had the legislative authority to do that. They never wrote it. That's why we had to introduce our bill, is because the CFTC said, we know we can exempt these banks, but we think we should still regulate them. They decided to continue to regulate the small guys, even though they had the legislative authority to exempt them, but they did not exempt them.
Why'd you
So
remove
we-
the $30 billion cap? In your
we
bill,
didn't
that's
remove it.
big.
It's still written in legislation.
No,
If
the
they,
amendment there is the same,
No, we
except.
didn't
we added an
minus-
extra amendment. The CFTC could still decide that they want to exempt anyone under $30 billion. They still have the legislative authority to do that. It's just up to them whether they think that's best for the markets or not. We came in and said, well, if you think that that's not right, we're going to add exemptions for these small groups that will just have to completely get out of that industry. Like, you know, they would have to completely leave the swaps industry, and it would really affect rules.
Well, why did the electric guys need to do swaps? Why? What profits them to do credit default swaps?
And, they're different sections.
Interest rate swap.
We own a bank, all the electric cooperatives in the country own a bank called Cooperative Finance Corporation. And all they do is loan money to electric co-ops to build power lines, substations, power plants, etc. That's all they do.
Wonderful.
And the reason that we wanted them exempt was because they are not a Wall Street bank, like Bank of America, like Citibank, that the Congress wanted to control.
Well, weren't they already loaning
So
money?
Van, let's move on and let somebody else
Okay,
ask a
I'm sorry.
question
Yeah.
here, okay? All right, Kathy.
Hi. I'm also a retired teacher.
Yay, good for
And
you.
right now I teach English to adults, immigrants.
Oh, good.
And so I have some real concerns about where our country is going as far as immigration goes. I think I've seen some of the state laws in other states getting real conservative in their treatment of immigrants, and I fear that's going to happen in Missouri as well. Here in California, we've got a fairly substantial Hispanic community because we have a turkey processing plant here, and all of the workers there are legal residents. Most of them are citizens. They own homes here, their kids go to school here, they contribute to the community in many ways, and yet, from what Missouri is proposing now, with some things like the English driver's license, have you heard about that one, where everybody would have to take the driving test only in English, and several other laws of that same nature. I'm afraid that a lot of our Hispanic people in this community are going to leave town. And if that happens, our schools are going to lose $1 million in revenue. A lot of the homes will be put up for sale. We've already got a flooded housing market, and I fear that all of that's going to happen. So basically, I want to know where you stand as far as some of the immigration reform goes. I know that you want to, have the borders and that kind of stuff, but what about here, with the people that are already here and legal? Is it necessary to make them feel like second-class citizens?
But I think some of the issues you cited are, as you say, are state issues. So that would be governed by your state representatives, state senators in Jefferson City. You know, they're voting and discussing those things. So I would certainly encourage you to talk to your state rep and state senator about those because they're dealing directly. I'm more at the federal level, looking at the overall picture. And I think my feeling, and most people in the 4th District I talk to, is that we have no concerns and very supportive of legal immigration. So if people are here legally and going through the system, that's great. The concerns immigrants and who aren't following our laws. And so for those people, I think most people just want them to follow the laws. You know, I hear lots of examples.
It's so easy to say, just follow the laws. Are you aware of how many years it takes?
That's what I was just getting ready to say. I hear from people who are on the waiting list, and I mean, for years it takes to get to become a legal citizen here. And it's very frustrating for them who are following the laws when somebody can just ignore the laws and come across the border and start working and taking their jobs when they're trying to follow the system. So I'm for expediting our immigration system so that people who are here wanting to come legally, and our country needs immigrants in many ways, that they can do it without having to wait years. But at the same time, I think we need to enforce our laws that we have and discourage people from coming here illegally.
So you are for then expediting, giving
legal. But not giving, earning.
Earning, but making it easier to get the proper papers and everything.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, well, that's good to hear.
Congresswoman, we have time for one more question.
Oh, well, Larry, you get the last word. Senator.
I'm on.
Senator, yeah, look here, you edged her out.
All I wanted to say is that what I'm most concerned about probably isn't energy, and it probably isn't all the stuff. I'm on Medicare now. I'll be on Social Security next year probably. But I'm really concerned about where we're going, our finances. I mean, 40% of our money, because, I mean, dude, I got grandkids, you know. I mean, I'm glad to hear you say the farm program would cost less, and you and I both are. But it's time we started spending a little less money and getting our house in order. And I just wanted to tell you that before you left.
Thank you.
Maybe there's still time for recess.
Hey,
you're right, Larry. I appreciate you saying that, because if we don't get our fiscal house in order, everything else doesn't matter. You're right. If we go bankrupt as a country in a few years,
if
so
that
it
means
is
I get a
serious.
little less Social Security, that's okay. I mean, I don't. We got to think about everybody that comes after us too. Right?
Absolutely.
Representative Hartzler, will you
said.
debate Teresa Hensley?
Go ahead. No.
Okay, sorry.
Well, kind of tying into what Senator Roback speaks of, can you talk to us just a little bit? We saw some jobs numbers over the last couple of days that are moving up a little bit at a time, still improving, but not at the rate we'd like to see that. Can you talk a little bit about what's going to happen? Folks need jobs.
Yeah, we need to remove the barriers to job creation. That's what we've been doing in the House. I spent a lot of time talking to our job creators, business owners, and saying, why aren't you hiring? And they'll tell me it's a lot to do with the uncertainty. They don't know what their taxes are going to be next year. They don't know what their energy costs are going to be because they're skyrocketing. They don't know what regulations are going to come down to require them to add expenses to their business that aren't really needed. They don't know if they're going to be able to access finance. They're not, you know, there's just a lot of uncertainty. So we've been trying to pass bills in the House to remove these barriers so they would feel more certain, more confident, and be able to expand and grow and create more jobs. Frankly, though, those bills are just sitting over in the Senate. They're not even voting on them, and it's so frustrating. But I can't force the Senate to vote on bills. You know, I can't force them to pass a budget. It's been 3 years since they've even passed a budget. So it's very frustrating, but we're going to keep doing everything we can to create jobs, because that's going to help our budget situation too, get more people back to work. But anyway, thank you guys. I'm sorry I have to go, but appreciate it. Take care. I did. No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I apologize for that.
That bill she just passed,
Well, I'm so sorry. What did you want to ask?
I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah, I'm a little upset. You have better skill. I bet I did a baby step in a day for seconds. I got to get home and see where one of them wakes up. I get a job. I get a wheelchair. She don't care.
I think the problem.
I wouldn't change how you're doing it.
Yes, sir. Come on, right?
It is. Yeah. Well, my faith is central to who I am and what I do. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without but I rely on him every day for prayer and wisdom, like Solomon prayed for wisdom, and I read my Bible every day, and there's several Bible studies.
Yeah, they're right in the reads.
Well, that's true, but I want you to know there are a lot of good people there too. You hear about the bad ones, and so be encouraged by that. There's a lot of good ones. Thank you. Appreciate it. Your prayers are most important.
Yeah, well, thanks for comment.
Appreciate that.
What was that?
Could you possibly, you mentioned nuclear. Came around here. Could you possibly hang in there? Obama credit for the failure. One is in Georgia, right now is under construction, and there's another. So he did that. Okay. And then one other question. You stated in one of these meetings recently, never taken any money from the government. Rural fire, and really got to read them. Get in there.
Yeah, is he still on my energy? I changed the subject yet. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I'll let you out. Hartzler, will you make Teresa Hensley?
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
I'm in the